Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Given the current shelter-in-place order covering the state of California and social distancing guidelines issued by the federal, state, and local authorities, the city is implementing changes to participate in council meetings. The council chambers will be open to the public, but we'll be implementing social distancing policies and will limit the number of people who may be in the council chambers at one time. The meeting will be webcast and accessed at the link shown. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at the link shown, providing written comment at the same website, participating by phone, or coming to the City Council meeting in person. We are practicing social distancing, can only accommodate a maximum of 16 people at one time. I will call the January 19th, 2021 meeting to order. And tonight, I would like to invite our newly minted Eagle Scout, Amanda Bales, to lead us in the flag salute tonight. Amanda was just awarded her Eagle Scout badge by the Boy Scouts of America Sequoia chapter. Amanda is the first young lady in our region to receive this honor, and we join her parents and the citizens of Clovis to tell you that we are very proud of you. Amanda, after leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd like to introduce your family and tell us a little bit about how you've accomplished this great thing, that would be great. So if you would lead us, we'd appreciate it.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Amanda, if you would introduce your family, and if you'd like to say something, we're all ears. Okay.
So my mom, Margie, my brother, Bryson, my dad, Jason. And thank you guys for your support and letting me be here tonight. I appreciate it. I don't know what to say. Oh, I built owl and bat boxes for owls and bats up in the mountains. Thank you.
And Amanda, I have a challenge coin for you, and it has on one side the Pledge of Allegiance, and the other side is the emblem of our great nation. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Get too close.
All right, here we go.
You guys will be close.
I'm smiling.
Can you tell for smiling?
I do with my eyes.
That's what everyone says.
Well, the problem is when I wear this, my glasses steam up.
Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Amanda.
Mayor, can I say something, Jason, before you go? I've had the pleasure of seeing and knowing the Bales family ever since Bryson was maybe in the 3rd grade. And so we started out in Pack 11, and the sister was just tagging along playing, and how their family has grown in Scouts, and how Jason and Margie have really not just helped their own children, helped my children, have helped many children within our area. Their troop is sponsored by our own very own Kiwanis Club here in town. And so they are the ones who put up the flags in Old Town during all the national holidays, coming up 5 in the morning, picking up late at night whenever all the events are over. And so to Amanda, congratulations. You are a pioneer. You are leading the way for many young women after you to enjoy, you know, the scouting life and to be able to, you know, just be. I love how the scout motto is always just leave it better than how you found it, and I think you will have left scouting much better than when you have left it. So congratulations, and Jason and Margie, congratulations on this. Yeah, you must be proud.
Thank you. And if I could ask the clerk to call roll, please.
Councilmember Ashbeck? Here. Councilmember Flores?
Here.
Councilmember Monatua?
Here.
Councilmember Whalen is running a little bit late, about 30 minutes, I understand. Mayor Bessinger?
Here. Now we come to presentations and proclamations. Tonight we have a presentation of a proclamation declaring January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And I've asked Councilmember Monatua to read this into the record. Vaughn.
Yes. I'm honored to be able to read our proclamation this evening declaring January 2021 as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Whereas the Fresno Economic Opportunities Commission, the Sanctuary and Support Services Central Valley Against Human Trafficking Project assisted and identified over 1,300 victims of human trafficking from our local communities. And whereas the Central Valley Against Human Trafficking Project provides resources to empower self-sufficiency, restore dignity, and support recovery from trauma for survivors, and whereas the International Labor Organization recognizes there are an estimated 40.3 million people in modern slavery globally, where 1 in 4 victims are children, and whereas the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimates that 1 out of 6 endangered runaways are likely child sex trafficking victims. And whereas the U.S. Department of Labor identified 139 goods from 75 countries made by forced and child labor, and whereas the City of Clovis recognizes the need for greater awareness and accountability in regard to modern-day slavery, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Clovis does hereby proclaim January 2021 to be National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and is witnessed signed by our mayor and affixed with our seal this 19th day of January 2021.
Thank you, Vaughn. And I'm proud to say that our transit vehicles are mobile safe places. If a victim of trafficking or human slavery needs to get help, they have nothing more to do than jump on a city bus, and we will help them out. So it's important. We just had an incident here locally in December with a 12-year-old girl who was taken from her home and put on an aircraft at our airport. And since we've already been working on signage in the airport, but if you go to the Fresno airport today, you will see 3 very prominent signs that tell people if you're here against your will and you need help, what they can do. And it's in English and in Spanish, and we have one right inside the Federal Immigration Station, just in case. So thank you, Ron, for that.
And I think members of the Fresno EOC Sanctuary are here. If you can come and say a couple of words, and then you can pick up your proclamation as well. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Sorry. So I just wanted to take a moment to introduce Amber, who will be speaking on behalf of our organization today. But the main reason for that is just this week, we have recently promoted her to our CVHT manager. So she's been with our organization for a while, and she's done great work with outreach, and we're excited to see what she brings to the table as a manager. So I'll have Amber speak.
Thank you, Misty. I do also want to recognize that we have some of our community partners here with us. What's really important in human trafficking is the importance and the theme of collaboration. Nothing that is done within this community is done by one single organization. So I'd like to also recognize Breaking the Chains here and Made for them as well, if you guys don't mind just waving. So some great organizations that we work with and a few others that weren't able to make it today. So every January, we celebrate National Slavery and Human Trafficking Awareness Month. This month is dedicated to raising awareness to keep individuals out of trafficking situations and celebrating the stories of those who have survived and are thriving despite of their trauma. When I spoke last year here, I said the following quote: "In our next decade, we hope to change the landscape of human trafficking movement in the Central Valley by creating and setting a standard for trauma-informed, comprehensive care for all survivors of trafficking from the point of contact through their healing process, in the hopes that we might be able to share more stories of hope and freedom, of thrivers giving back to their community, and of people who have overcome immense trauma doing good work in this world." It is now only a year later, and the way in which we serve survivors has completely shifted, and the good that survivors and thrivers have done during this time in this pandemic is nothing short of inspirational. We had survivors volunteer spare time to sew masks for the community and essential workers, survivors who themselves were essential workers that continued to work caring for the ill and caring for the elderly, thrivers who were able to maintain 4.0 GPAs in their college courses, even through the struggle of online learning, survivors who didn't speak English, assist and in some cases even advocate for equal access for their children's virtual education, and children sitting outside of their local Starbucks or public library so that they could access Wi-Fi to complete their coursework. It is through these stories that we want to celebrate resiliency, hope, and community. I'd also like to take the time to highlight the advocates, case managers, educators, and supervisors within this movement. Like countless other businesses and nonprofits, we had to quickly unlearn and then relearn what we knew about providing direct service. We had to effectively build trust and connection over a phone call. We had to adjust to holding empathetic space for clients by listening to their stories of trauma through a Zoom conference. We created support groups so that survivors could share their grief, share their struggles, and their triumphs with other survivors so that they didn't feel so alone. We launched our caregiver and minor empowerment groups to provide in-depth education on trafficking, and so that parents could better understand the trauma of their child, and so that the youth that have been impacted could feel empowered and use their own voice to acknowledge and describe their trafficking experience. We also were able to provide education to hundreds of community members, service providers, and individuals, even outside of our counties, spreading our reach so that more potential victims can then be identified and connected to help. We did all of this while carrying and grappling with our own grief and struggles. I could never truly put into words the immense gratitude I have for the individuals that are doing this hard work. Today, we participated in our annual Pledge to Stop Human Trafficking event, where anti-trafficking agencies in the Central Valley come together to raise funds to end trafficking. If you guys would like to join us in our mission, you can go to pledge2stoptrafficking.org to learn more and to donate yourselves. You can also join us at our 11th annual conference on January 27th that will be held on a virtual platform, and you can see it on our Facebook to learn more. We are thankful for your support and look forward to continuing this over the years to come. Thank you for proclaiming this month as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month in the City of Clovis.
Thank you for your dedication and your important work.
Thank you.
Ed Vaughn will give you your proclamation.
We are not going to shake your hand. We're going to wave at you and go, hi.
You guys want to come up here? We'll smile with our eyes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Lynn, go ahead.
I want to just chime in. It's nice to see you here again. And there's a few things in our universe that I'm sorry we have to have, but I'm glad we do. And the work you do is one of those things. So I'm grateful for the work. It is incredibly hard work, and echo Drew's comments and your comments. And congrats on the new job, by the way. But someday it'd be nice to live in a world where this wasn't an issue, sort of like domestic violence. I feel the same way about Marjorie Mason Center. Like, I wish we didn't have to have it, but really grateful for that we do. And the work of the sanctuary is just so extraordinary. So thank you. Really, really hard work, and grateful for all that you do. Thanks for being here. Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Before we open public comments, I think it's appropriate to say something. It's important to celebrate the resilience and the living document that is our Constitution. Tomorrow is Inauguration Day for our 46th President, Joseph Biden. President Biden begins his term in a divided and fractured nation. And I hope that with his significant experience and leadership, that he can bring everyone to the table and create an environment where all Americans feel part of the democratic process. Our American experience needs a little bit of help right now. If we can stop being Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals, and being identity politics, and start being Americans first, I think we'll be much better off. I wish President Biden the best of luck and success. May God protect and guide him. I'd also like to thank our outgoing president, President Trump. Thank him for his dedication to our nation. And lastly, may God continue to bless the United States of America. We need a little bit of help right now. And I would invite any of my colleagues if they wanted to say anything, and then we'll go to public comments. Seeing none, I will open public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Does anyone in council chambers wish to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
There are none.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, did we get any correspondence?
We did not.
Okay, I will close public comments. In regards to ordinances and resolutions, with respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by the unanimous consent of the council. Now we come to the consent calendar. Items considered routine in nature are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item, unless a council member requests individual consideration. A council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of the adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For the adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Does any member of the council wish to have any item on the consent calendar pulled? Seeing none, any member of the public present in chambers wish to have an item on the consent calendar pulled? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
Mr. Clerk, we have no correspondence?
No.
Okay, I will come back to the council for motion.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 4 with 1 absent. Now we come to public hearings. A public hearing is an open consideration within a regular or special meeting of the City Council for which special notice has been given and may be required. When a public hearing is continued, noticing of the adjourned item is required as per Government Code 54955.1. Item 9 is consider approval of a resolution, a request to amend the 2017 amended and restated Memorandum of Understanding between the County of Fresno and the City of Clovis regarding standards of annexation to address the annexation of approximately of approximately 40 acres of property at the southeast corner of Ashland and Thompson Avenues. City of Clovis applicant, George Gonzalez is our presenter. George.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. We've been working on the subject annexation now for just about 2.5 years in the making here. And just to give you a brief background as to where we're at with our city limits and growth in the Loma Vista area, specifically the southeast area. The map here on the screen, the shaded purple area, that's our current city limits as of today. And this project that is going to be considered by the council this evening, it's these 40 acres, just immediately east of Thompson Avenue. So a few years ago, when this annexation came into play, the county did make a comment to us that once we reached Highland and we continued to the east, just give us a warning to be careful that you're creating a peninsula as you're heading east, and you're not bringing in any of the land on the north side of Ashland. As you can see, our city limits have stopped at Leonard right now, and primarily because this is planned for a master plan community. It's the McFarland properties, and right now it's another name for it, the home place. The Yosemite group is working with staff to bring in preferably the 300 acres here out to Thompson. It's still in the works, but yet it's not a complete application at this time. So in June of 2017, the council did approve tentative tract map 6161, which is identified in blue on the screen, for a 142 lot single family residential development. A year after that, in 2018, the council approved the Ashland-Thompson Southeast reorganization, which encompassed the 40 acres identified by the red border. At that point, shortly after that, we mailed the letter to the county, which they were not able to provide us with what is referred to as a consistency letter that LAFCO needs in order to continue with the annexation process, primarily because it is creating now a peninsula further east on the south side. As you can see here, right on the edge of the map, we have McCall Avenue. So we're growing pretty substantially heading east. At the point, then we started talks with the county, and the applicant of the annexation and the map, Stone Valley Communities, reached out to us and just indicated, what can I do to keep the project moving forward? At which point we reached out to the county, and they said, you'll need an amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding. During that whole process, the applicant last month processed a second map within the annexation area for a 41 lot single family development, which brings the committed to development within this annexation area to 100%. So the applicant is committed. He wants it to annex in so we can continue developing our Loma Vista specific plan. With the requirements of this third amendment of the MOU, the county is requiring that we bring in the full right-of-way of Ashland Avenue along the project boundary, and also the remaining public right-of-way of Ashland on the south side of the water reuse facility. This facility, I believe, came into the city back in between 04 and 06, and it only brought in Ashland Avenue to the center line, approximately. So the county is now indicating just to clean it up, bring in the rest of it. And this is typical and standard in annexations, and staff supports it. And therefore, this is the final step in order to get this annexation started again with LAFCO. And we ask that the council this evening approve the third amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding between the county and the city of Clovis. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, George. Any questions for staff? Len?
Just quickly, this is not germane to the item, but I didn't hear what you said. The applicant on the parcel is who again? You said it kind of quickly.
Stone Valley Communities.
Oh, Stone Valley Communities.
Which is Manny Penn. He's here with us this evening.
Okay, I'm trying to connect my dots here. Thank you. I thought you said Golden Valley. I thought that's a health center. It's going to start building single-family homes. I got confused. All right, thanks. Thanks.
Any other member? Seeing none, I'll open this to the public. Any member of the public in chambers wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
There are none.
And did we receive any correspondence, Mr. Clerk?
We did not.
Okay, I will close public comments and come back to council for discussion or for action.
I'll make a motion that we amend the 2017 amended and restated MOU between the County of Fresno and City of Clovis per the staff report.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0, 1 absent. Item 10, consider introduction of ordinance R 2020-004, a request to amend the PCC zone district to establish the Loma Vista Marketplace PCC zone district standards for approximately 23 acres of property located at the southwest corner of Shaw and Leonard Avenues. Loma Vista Marketplace LP applicant, Provost and Pritchard Consulting Group representative, and our presenter is Dave Merchant. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you noted, this is a request to approve a rezone amendment for rezone 2020-004, the Loma Vista Marketplace. The site, as you mentioned, is located at the southwest corner of Shaw and Leonard Avenues in the heart of the Loma Vista Village Plan. The Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan, which is a subcomponent of the overall Loma Vista Plan, was established back in May of 2009 and then amended once a few years later. Its vision, the North and South Master Plan, is a dynamic pedestrian-oriented district or set of districts with an intimately scaled mix of uses, and it's designed to be the social, retail, and service entertainment hubs within the Loma Vista community. The specific marketplace area constitutes Planning Area 5 within the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan. Planning Area 5, that's the green shaded area on this graphic, kind of right in the middle, just south of Shaw. The Planning Area 5 area is designated for and planned for Planned Commercial Center, or PCC. It does require and has a development plan that establishes a use schedule along with development standards and the opportunity for unique design criteria. This particular rezone would establish PCC standards that are unique to the Loma Vista Marketplace. The development standards in question are those that are shown on the screen. I won't spend a lot of time here except to highlight that there are building setbacks and intensity specified, as well as parking ratios. Of note, the parking here is a little less than would normally be required for a commercial area outside the Loma Vista area. A ratio of 4 stalls per 1,000 square feet is proposed here, and a conventional shopping center might propose something around 5.4 stalls per 1,000. This is really a reflection of the pedestrian and bicycling friendly atmosphere around the North and South Master Plan, and the fact that this is a mixed-use area, both of which will serve to drive down the otherwise required parking ratios. Staff feels very comfortable with those ratios. This is a highlight of the overall boundary. Phase 1 is shown on the far eastern side of the plan area. There are a total of 3 phases, or 3 subdivided areas, I guess, of the master plan boundary. Phase 1 is the green area. That's really a primarily retail sub-area that could also be used for services and office to a lesser degree. This is also the area where the drive-throughs are allowed along the Shaw Avenue frontage, as well as along Leonard. So the drive-throughs here are here, these 2 buildings, as well as this building here. The major retail anchors are located along this alignment here, roughly between 13,000 and 26,000 square feet. This is a roughly 19,000 square foot building. These are conceptual buildings. These configurations can change over time based on what the market ultimately brings. Area number 2 is the area that fronts along Sanders Avenue here and Shaw. This is characterized by a retail shop area with pedestrian connectivity to both Sanders and to Shaw. And again, a lot of those graphics, I don't know if we have a graphic in this presentation, but characterized by the Sanders crossing underneath Shaw Avenue and creating an elevation differential that kind of highlights the activity here on the corner. Site number 3, or phase 3, is the office component located in the southeastern corner of the overall project. That encompasses about 41,000 square feet in office and about 5,000 square feet in a daycare. The proposed PCC standards include a land use schedule where allowable land uses in each of the 3 areas are identified. The descriptions here, or the definitions for the uses, coincide with the development code, but the use schedule itself is unique to the Loma Vista area, or excuse me, to the Loma Vista marketplace. As an example, drive-through, let me see if I can highlight that here. Drive-through uses here, you can see are permitted as a permitted use without a conditional use permit in that area number 1, but they're not allowed in the other 2 areas. So there's a demonstration of the unique standards and criteria that are applicable to the marketplace. In terms of circulation, there are 5 street frontages along the total project area. On Shaw Avenue, there's one midpoint access where both right turns and left turns into the site are available. Along Leonard Avenue, there are 3 access points along each of the major locations here, which I'll go back to their button, here, here, and I believe here. I've got it right. Along Duncan Avenue, there are 5 access points shown, and that really becomes sort of the utility and access route for the commercial center and the majors that I pointed out earlier. On Loma Vista Parkway, which is the southern boundary of the site, there's 1 access that serves the office area. And then finally, on Sanders, there is just 1 access point. And again, Sanders ends up at being surface level here at grade where this access point is, and then it hits, goes underground and underneath the Shaw Avenue corridor. From those access points, there are driveways throughout from each of the points of entry, providing comprehensive access to and around the site. In terms of pedestrian walkways, the major urban trail requirement is met with a perimeter trail configuration or paseo configuration that meets the city standards with 30-foot right-of-way, 10 to 12-foot trail alignment, along with the remainder of the 30 feet, so roughly 20 feet of landscaping. That is a reconfiguration of the concept that was approved in the original master plan, and I'll show you a little bit about that realignment here in a minute. Along with the major perimeter trail, there is a robust series of internal walkways that provide connectivity from each of the pedestrian points of access to and through the site. So roughly speaking, a pedestrian could enter at any point from the perimeter streets and get wherever they wanted on the interior if that's what they wanted to do. So this talks a little bit about the transition from the original concept, which showed a major trail or paseo coming off the corner of Shaw and Leonard and running diagonally into the site and then out around to the corner and back again. The staff and the applicants team worked for a long time trying to figure out if we could make that work for this project area. Ultimately, what we found are the operational and safety limitations were too great to overcome. in short, we could not find a way to safely commingle the pedestrian and vehicle characteristics of the shopping center with the city's needs for its trail and paseo configuration. And ultimately, that led us to place the trail along the perimeter of the site, allowing its normal 30-foot right-of-way with usage patterns to go along the outside, and then to supplement that with the interior trail and walkway configurations that I showed you earlier. So that is a change from the original concept approved with the master plan, but we viewed it as being a realistic and, in fact, enhanced set of pedestrian characteristics for this particular location. There will be a community gateway and community entry features that are included with this project. Pictures on the screen are examples of similar features in the surrounding area. I'll show you a little bit more about what the community gateway will look like here in a minute in a couple of pictures. The architecture for the center is based on a mission revival theme that's characterized by neutral colors, tile roofs, arched openings. You'll also see a combination of gabled roofs and hipped roofs on the vertical features. There are some decorative corbels that you would see along at the interior here and around the perimeter. So those features are consistent with the guiding vision for design for this area. And we're pretty pleased with the overall design presentation that's included here. A little more focus area on the architecture for the retail building C, which is located near the corner of Shaw and Leonard. This is from the inside. And then the same area shown from the outside. Again, this is that gateway feature with the pilaster and then the diagonal trail orienting into the site. And then a little closer blow up here with the vertical feature there in the pilaster, drawing people to the corner, and then the arch entryway pulling people from the corner into the site. Enhanced landscaping there as well to make it a very inviting corner. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this project at their December meeting, December 16th. At that point, there was just one public comment that addressed some concerns the speaker had regarding architecture. They're a little concerned about maybe the plainness of the architecture, as well as a general idea that we should pay attention to the farming that continued to exist in the surrounding area. The Planning Commission ultimately voted unanimously to adopt a resolution recommending approval of the rezoning. Planning Commission and staff jointly have found that the project is consistent with the goals, policies, and actions of the general plan. The project is not detrimental to the public interest, health and safety, convenience, or general welfare of the city. The properties are physically suited for the requested PCC zoning and the anticipated land use, and therefore staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of the rezone, or in fact, introduction of the rezoning subject to the conditions that are in Attachment 1. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave? Lynn?
Well, I was thinking about the allowed uses, I guess. So that was my first question. I was a little bit surprised to see nightclubs. I was looking for grocery stores. Is that what retail stores show on merchandise? Is that a grocery store?
That would qualify, yes.
Okay. We've gone down this path before where we have these PCC approved and then the mix is not quite right. So I just was sort of curious about that. I was also surprised to see theaters because I think theaters are, I mean, I feel like they might not ever come back, but I'm not a developer, so I'm not sure about that. So I was just, I don't know, I found the collection of things an interesting mix of uses. I guess that's all. I was surprised to see those. I also had a question about who is the applicant? See, my papers are all mixed up. I get papers mixed up. Loma Vista Marketplace. Is there a person behind Loma Vista Marketplace? Will we meet somebody tonight from Loma Vista Marketplace? I'm interested to know who's really the applicant.
Yeah, the owner of the site has been a principal contact for us,
And
Mr.
who is
Dyke.
that?
Will Dyke.
Oh, okay, all right. I figured that as much, but I was just trying to why are you here? And then I was so confused. It helps to have a name. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Bong?
Dave, thank you for presenting. I think it's exciting for the area, especially seeing the north of Shaw here, starting to develop. I want to kind of go around with regards to the trail, and I know that you have been working with the applicant to try to pull the trail underneath the project itself, and so, you know, in looking and living in Loma Vista, I've seen areas where we actually did the trail in the middle of the streets, and I don't see enough of it, but I like those. But I've never asked to see if something like that can be done in a commercial area. I am very pleased to hear that we have stressed the connectivity of the buildings. And I think that is lost in a lot of commercial centers. Giving Sierra Vista as an example, and I know that was built way back when, but you know, you cross the street across from the home store, and all you get now is grass. There's no more sidewalks. So in other words, for me to continue to push a stroller, I now have to get onto the street to actually make it now to Kohl's, you know, to go into the parking lot. So hopefully when you were talking about it, hopefully there are designated walk pathways, so that way a mother or father with kids can not have to worry about going through the parking lot to get from this store to that store, this center to that center. And I think that's what I'm understanding, and I think that's very encouraging to hear, especially with Loma Vista stressing so much about walkability and trails and connectivity. And so I guess my question is, can something or cannot something like that work where the parking lot is around the trail that goes from the corner directly into the center and it's still working its way through, or is that just makes the buildings so difficult to be able to be situated?
Yeah, and that's ultimately what we found, that the ability to logically pull the trail through the site just wasn't there when we understood the operational needs of both the trail, which looks for as much as possible uninterrupted alignments. So we try to add as few breaks as possible in the trail alignment, while at the same time accommodating legitimate demands for interior circulation for the shopping center, which is going to require that people be able to traverse through and loop around for stalls. The other concern which we kind of stumbled upon is the scenario under which trail alignments that would have necessarily pulled trail users along storefronts. So we want our trail users to be able to ride bikes and scooters and skateboards and so forth. That level of use doesn't necessarily interact very well with storefront users who are just trying to cross from the parking lot, you know, into a store. And not that people can't share that space. In fact, it's set up so that folks who want to go through the store or go through the shopping center can. But requiring that folks that, you know, wanted to ride their skateboards or so forth, to force them into the same area as the retail customers just didn't really make a lot of sense. And who was going to own the trail alignment and cover the liability associated with that just kind of added to the dynamics. So when all those things added up, that's why the ultimate decision was put the trail along the perimeter and then create opportunities for people who wanted to get through and into the site could do that pretty easily.
And listening to that, I think I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly on that. So when it goes on the perimeter, will there still be that wall requirement, or now will it be much more open? Meaning that, because now we're going to be walking along the backs of the buildings, I'm assuming. So and trucks will be coming there. So or is it still going to be the 30-foot and then a wall just so that the trail looks nice, but you can't look into it until there's an opening into the commercial center?
Yeah, probably the area that we're most concerned about that is along the Duncan alignment, which is the kind of the south boundary of the Majors site. And that will require some special attention during the site plan review process to screen the back of store from the pedestrian area. We're going to create a little additional space, we think, by putting the trail on the south side of Duncan, which will abut a future multifamily project. Be much fewer breaks there, and interruptions for trail crossing, and also create a little bit greater buffer.
Okay. I kind of like how the current Costco and the old shopping center, how there's no wall. Yeah. I do like that, where it's open and it creates the visibility between the two shopping centers. And so whatever we do, let's just pay attention to that to see how we can make it where people know. The next thing I wanted to ask that we pay attention to is, we talked about it a couple months ago. Let's make sure signage is clear. So whether it's signage through making the interior walkability a certain type of pavement and or actual signs, so that way people know there's the sign that goes to the Loma Vista trails. These are just the internal walkability, so that way there's a true distinction and also a true direction, because we want to keep that connectivity, and so that way people know right there is the park area, the civic center area. Here's the community here, and here it is to Clovis East. So just signage would be very helpful, especially as this will be the center part of Loma Vista. And then signage from, as we get more funding, from the other trails to get to this area as well. And so how we create that connectivity, I think that'll be very excellent for this area.
Good comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And a trail counter. Bob.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to stick with trails again. So if you could move back a couple of slides where we can see the either the trail, the pedestrian-friendly passageways through the development, and then also the trail. Okay, so this is a great slide. When I see a trail that goes around the perimeter, I see that as a sidewalk. Can you explain to me the difference between a trail and a sidewalk in your view, based on how this has changed?
Yeah, the perimeter trail will be the city's trail standard, so it'll be a 30-foot right-of-way for the trail with a 10 to 12-foot paved path and 20 feet of landscaping. So that'll be our actual trail and Paseo standard, as opposed to like a 5-foot walk with adjacent landscaping. So this will look, and to Vong's point, with signage and branding, it'll be a logical and clear extension of the trail system. That's the intention.
So the idea is that while this, some people can call this a sidewalk, it is a wider sidewalk, and it has, I'll call it green space, between the pavement that includes the sidewalk. Is that pavement going to be decorative? Is it going to be asphalt, or is it just going to be regular cement like a sidewalk? Or do you know?
I'm not entirely sure whether it ends up being asphalt or concrete, but okay. It'll be a paved surface.
Okay.
Two things that our family notices when we go into other towns and how we know we're in Clovis, is that when we are in Clovis, the parking spaces are, actually wide enough for people to get into. In other communities, they're not very wide. And the second thing is that there is a pedestrian-friendly path of travel from the area where you park generally, to the place where you want to shop. Now, as I look at this particular screen that you have up there, or slide on the screen, there is, I would say, more linear feet of pedestrian path than what was originally intended based on our plan. So, for example, we had kind of a diagonal that went through, and there was a measurement of a certain amount of linear feet there. Here, as I see it, there is more pedestrian pathways, but I don't know how pedestrian-friendly they are going to be. So, can you describe for me why it is going to be a safe path of travel on those areas with the green dots, and why that area is different than that diagonal pathway that we saw? Because people are going to be walking through it, and if it's safe, great. But if we're saying we don't want the diagonal because it's not safe, well, then what's so safe about this?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I guess it's a matter of scaling the pedestrian experience. The trail, by its definition, is intended to be as constant as possible, or with as few interruptions as possible. And it was the interpretation of staff and the applicant working together that could best be accomplished around the perimeter of the site, and that there wasn't a way to bring the trail through the middle of the site without significant interruptions in the form of drive aisles and parking backed up and so forth. So the alignments, the trails, let's see here. We get the corner access point, and then a lot of these pedestrian connections internal are along storefronts, and then there are a few that cross into the parking areas. So these are logical connections in retail store shopping centers that are going to happen one way or another. Here we're just making sure that we can get from the formal trail into the site and through the site if that's where people want to go. But there was always going to need to be, for instance, some connectivity along, the storefronts. The determination here was that we didn't necessarily want to try to put a Paseo scale walkway at that location.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like the reason why we moved the trail to the perimeter is because it was going to be safer, because it seems like we're going to have more pedestrian linear feet within the parking area going to the shopping center. So then the question in my mind becomes, well, what is it that's going to identify those pedestrian pathways? I don't think you have, at least I didn't notice any visuals within the parking lot area that's going to cause people to recognize that this is a pedestrian pathway, the pathway you should take, and also give some identifier for vehicles as they're traveling through the parking lot, that this is a place where you're likely going to see pedestrians. Can you talk to that a little bit? What is it that's going to make this safe for the pedestrians?
Yeah, we don't have an internal standard yet for the pathways within the shopping center. That is going to be worked out through the site plan review stage.
Okay.
If there are particular factors that should be considered, the council's directive on that would be well received. I think if you look at some of the newer shopping centers within the region, and you've seen the trail designations or the sidewalk or the pedestrian connectivity areas within shopping centers, I think those are generally what we're looking for. But but I couldn't tell you honestly that we have a particular standard that is required at this juncture.
And has there been any, and I'm asking these questions because you're basically asking us to modify the trail that was going to go through that. So I want to make sure that it's still pedestrian friendly if we're going to be modifying the trail. The other question I have is, has there been much thought given at this stage as to how bicyclists would be able to utilize this particular facility or the shops that are in here? I'm not exactly, like bicycle parking and the like? Yeah, it could be bicycle parking, places to lock up your bike, where that would, where that would be, any features that are going to be at that location where the bikes are going to be parked that's going to be indicative of the place that you should park your bike?
Again, that hasn't been set yet. It would be set at site plan review. Under the Green Building Code, bicycle parking now is mandatory. So where it used to be optional, now it's incorporated into virtually every project, or at least every project of this scale. So we will have bicycle parking here, and putting it in locations which are logical to where users want to be, I think makes a lot of sense.
Okay, and I'll just end with these comments. And I usually save them till after the motion's been made, but I think that in light of my questions, I probably ought to raise them now. The ask is for us to, vary from what it is that we have had in, at least what I've had in my mind based on the Loma Vista development. It's supposed to be a very pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly place where community is going to be encouraged through its development. We see how it's developed by the use of the trails that are already in the residential areas, and people have the opportunity to walk through those successfully or unsuccessfully as far as participation is concerned in those trails. I think successfully. And I think we will approve this, I want a high level of attention paid to the pedestrian path of travel through that shopping center, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Jose?
I have a question, but it's a little tangential. As far as Sanders is concerned, do we own the right-of-way on both sides of Shaw? Or is that something yet to be discussed?
I'm not sure of the answer to that. I'm not sure if there's any of my staff teammates behind me that know the answer to that.
Because we're planning for this underpass and flyover, but do we even own the land?
Good evening, Council. The answer is no, we don't own the land yet for the street that's going to cross under Shaw.
And do we know how far it's going to go, San Jose, Loma Vista?
I think that the distance is approximately 300 to 400 feet. It's going to dip under Shaw. Shaw is going to be elevated about 3 feet, so it's going to be fairly deep when it goes under Shaw. So to come to grade in a reasonable manner, it's going to be about 300 feet in.
But how far into the neighborhood, to the north and south?
About 300 feet each side.
That's it? Connecting what to what?
Connecting to whatever street system is created by development.
So there's nothing there, so whatever...
Yes.
Whatever arrives there with development.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, Drew.
Lynn?
Maybe, Will, you can talk to this, assuming you're going to comment. But my question, it goes a little bit to Joe's question, the relationship between the ownership of the right-of-way on Sanders or the access to Shaw and the development of the center. So does the center progress even in phase one dependent on any of the things that Councilmember Flores was asking about, or can they move independently?
I think the answer is that they can move independently. The function of the center does not depend on the underpass.
Those two items.
Occurring, yeah.
And then I was just going to chime in on Bob's comment. I think one of the distinguishing features of Clovis's trail is you can tell when you're on them, and you can tell where they go next, right? So if you come to a little jog in a neighborhood, you're not quite sure. So I do think the distinction of how you get through this center, otherwise I just think it's storefront sidewalk. And that doesn't seem like a trail to me. It just seems like what's in front of a grocery store or whatever. So to me, it's that ability to see that it's still the trail, even if my line of sight might not be exactly direct. So I think as this develops, if we really want people to walk through there, they need to be able to find their way and not just think they're going to walk into the CVS down to the whatever. So I think that's important as you work out the design of the trail inside.
Now I have another question.
Jose?
Am I misunderstanding, isn't the periphery the trail?
The trail, the city's trail is on the perimeter.
Okay, so
the interior path.
it's not through the retail portion of it. It's that big L that's sideways,
Correct.
right? That's the trail. So I hope we build a nice trail along the perimeter.
I think I heard, though, that it was all kind of walkable and you should be able to find your way through, and maybe I'll walk through the center to get up to the corner of Shaw and Sanders or whatever. So I was just trying to make sure they went together in some way. That's how I heard it a little bit. I might be wrong, but that's what? Right. But you got to be able to find your way through it so that you know you can actually, if you want to just cut through there, you actually can do that.
Right.
And it won't feel like you're cutting through. It'll still feel like you have a walkway to go on.
Vaughn?
And I was sure when we approved the development to the north, this is exactly what we were talking about, that there was going to be a pad and there was going to be a bigger store in the back, and that there was going to be walkable, clear pathways from that corner to the gas station, to the store, to that pad in the back. And so I think you've understood that the council's desire to maintain that, and so that I think we just want the same thing. And as that northern part develops, that we keep an eye and see if, okay, did we not do it good enough? How can we maintain that? Because this then leads to that civic center, and so I think this is very important because it's just connected right there. And so thank you for, I think, Councilman Whalen, reiterating sort of what we desired here. So.
Yes.
Thank you, Vaughn. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I will go to the public. Any member of the public in council chambers wish to address the council on this item? Yes, sir.
I put that down. Good evening. I'm Will Dyke. I'm the developer of the site with my co-owner, Phil Neufeld. He's here with us as well. The PCC process has been an interesting mental exercise when some of the rules you can bend with the cooperation of the city. I've never been through such a collaborative process with planners. Usually as developers, we just propose something and they give us thumbs up, thumbs down. We actually work together on this. They would email us and sketch things like, hey, have you considered this idea or that idea? It truly was collaborative to come up with the concept and the implementation of such a unique thing as the Loma Vista plan. We're here today for the PCC zone district, a very narrow scoped piece of what we're discussing. When you look a little bit more at 10,000 feet and you bring in things such as the park to the southwest, the big white space on the southern end of the plan that's up there right now, which is the 7 acres, 220 units of high-density residential. It's also part of this project, but not subject to the PCC. It might shed a little bit more light on what we're trying to achieve and where this is going. You guys are asking very specific and very insightful questions about the trail and how it connects, and clearly demonstrating learning from the past. And somebody mentioned the big brick wall that's behind the 30 feet and does it get landscaped. On that Duncan Avenue, which is the east-west portion, we moved it to the south side of the street, which is the high-density residential, and actually moved the residential all the way north to the property line as far as we could go. So there is no wall. It actually, the side of the trail front doors of residential high-density apartments facing the trail. So there is no wall. Those kinds of things were implemented to beautify it, to make it more interactive with the pedestrians, and to create a cohesive master plan. As a shopping center developer, believe me, we don't want to keep all the pedestrians out. We're not trying to have them bypass the inner workings. The complications that came up were, okay, you have people on 10-speed bicycles pedaling away with their earphones on at 20 miles an hour, and I've got a lady coming out of a grocery store with a shopping cart crossing that pedestrian path. It was more of the pedestrians intersecting that was kind of more an issue than it was the vehicles, but it was definitely a concern. So there was a lot of thought that went into it, and I appreciate all your comments, and they're very insightful. If it's assurance for you, happy to sit down and look at the big plan of what's all going on if you ever are interested. It's an exciting project, and really hope that you are supportive of it today. Are there any specific questions while I'm up here?
Thank you, Mr. Dyke. Any questions for Mr. Dyke? Vaughn?
Yeah. What is your time frame with regards to the different phases and
there was an early slide, the eastern 9 buildings, which is everything kind of from the main entry to the right side. We're about 50% tenanted, signed already. So those are phase 1. Construction drawings are ready to submit as soon as I think we have a 2-week waiting period after today. So we'll be into the city with the first buildings immediately. We have signed leases, deposits in hand, we're ready to go. And that includes the northern portion of the office space, and then the spec building, the larger office building to the south to follow, and then the far west side, which is the green area that fronts on the pedestrian underpass. That will probably, we'll wait until that underpass gets built. There's going to be a lot of dust over there.
Any other questions for Mr. Dyke? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other, Glenn, did you have something? No. Any other member of the public in chambers wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
Mr. Clerk, did we get any correspondence?
No.
Okay, I'll close public comments and come back to the council for discussion or for action.
I'll make a motion that we amend the PCC zone district to establish this Loma Vista Marketplace PCC zone district standards for the property described in the staff report. And I'll make a comment after this.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
I just want to add one thing. I think it is really exciting. The Loma, this is another example of kind of patience pays off when areas develop. We wish this would happen, would have happened some years ago. But anyway, I wanted to echo Vaughn's comments. It's really an exciting moment, and the thoughtfulness is really appreciated because, as I've said 1,000 times, you get one chance to take a piece of dirt and do something with it, not 2 chances, at least in any of our lifetimes. So anyway, thank you for that. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item 11 is consider actions related to the annexation of territory, annexation number 66, T6277, northeast corner of Locan and Teague, to the City of Clovis Community Facilities District number 2004-1, Police and Fire Services. A, consider approval of a resolution annexing territory, annexation number 66, T6277, northeast corner of Locan and Teague, to the City of Clovis Facilities District number 2004-1, Police and Fire Services, and calling a special landowner election to annex territory, annexation number 66, to the City of Clovis Community Facilities District number 2004-1, Police and Fire Services. And item B is consider approval of a resolution of the City of Clovis declaring the results of a special landowner election and directing recording of the notice of special tax lien for the City of Clovis Community Facilities District number 2004-1, Police and Fire Services. Our presenter is Jay Schlegel, but before we start, this is the time and place for a public hearing in this council's proceedings for the Community Facilities District number 2004-1. The hearing is to acquire annexation 66 into the district and to levy a special tax in annexation number 66. Before I formally open the hearings, is there anyone wishes to file a written protest? If so, they must be filed with the clerk now. Seeing none, this hearing is now open. We'll first have a presentation by staff about annexation 66. After that, we will receive comments and questions and any oral protests from any interested persons. When all comments have been received, the hearing will be closed.
Good evening,
Okay.
Mayor and members of the council. On December 7th, 2020, the council heard a request by the affected property owners to include territory at the northeast corner of Locan and Teague, and is indicated in the detailed map and identified as CFD Annexation Number 66 to the city CFD 2000-4-1. Tonight's actions will finalize the annexation process by holding a public hearing and property owner election.
Thanks, Jay. Are there any comments, questions, or protests from any member of the audience present in chambers? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
Ms. Clerk, did we receive any written protests?
No.
Comments? Okay. I will close the hearing. We may now consider and adopt a resolution annexing territory annexation number 66 to the Community Facilities District number 2004-1, which will annex territory described in the boundary map to the district and call a special property owner election, which will call for the property owner vote to approve the special tax and appropriations limit for annexation number 66.
You just took all the fun out of the motion. I'll make that motion. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'll make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Will the clerk please announce the results of the property owner vote?
Mayor, I have one ballot representing 5 votes, all in favor, indicating unanimous passage.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The record shows that the property owner votes are unanimous and in favor of the levy of the special taxes and establishment of the appropriations limit. We may now proceed with the final actions for the district.
Now is my turn?
Yes.
Oh, it's so exciting. I'd like to make a motion for the resolution of the City of Clovis declaring the results of the special landowner election and directing the recording of the notice of special tax lien for City of Clovis Community Facilities District number 2004-1.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. It is done. Okay. Administrative items. Consider approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a consultant agreement between the City of Clovis and Accent Environmental Incorporated, addressing the preparation of the general plan, housing element, and related services. Dave is our presenter, or Luke is our presenter, or the invisible man.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So Dave left, and Dave's not here, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in for him. You have his item presentation? Well, all right. Okay. So the item tonight that staff is presenting is for council to consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a consultant agreement between the city and Ascent Environmental to address the preparation of the general plan housing element and related services. So staff went through a process, an RFP process, to solicit firms to help us in preparing the 6th cycle for our general plan housing element update. As a result of that process, we have selected the firm Ascent Environmental to assist us in preparing this housing element. The scope of work includes assistance with the city's review of the RENA methodology, as well as preparation of the next 3 housing element annual reports. The staff member that will be leading the Ascent group is an individual that is familiar with the city's housing element and our past annual reports that have been prepared, so our level of comfort with this particular firm is very high. So the housing element is basically a mandatory element of the general plan. It is the only element that is subject to a requirement that the document be updated based on a specific schedule established by the state. Basically, this housing element is updated every 8 years, and our deadline to have our housing element updated is December 2023. or January 2024. By executing or by council authorizing staff to enter into this contract, we'll be able to get Ascent on board, and they will be helping us in preparing our annual report that is due this spring, and then our future annual reports for the next 2 years. So the specific scope of work for the consultant is really 2 phases. One, they're going to be helping us administer and then prepare the annual housing element progress reports, and then also our regional housing needs allocation support. Phase 2 will be tasks that cover the housing element preparation, the community engagement and public hearings, our HCD review of the housing element, environmental compliance, and then final documents and adoption. So the fiscal impact associated with this contract is approximately $250,000. The city received notice of an award of grant funding in the amount similar to that, $250,000, that we will be earmarking for this specific work. So for the reasons of it's required, and we went through the RFP process, the city is recommending that council authorize execution of a contract with Ascent to conduct the next housing element and environmental review. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for comments, and Dave's back. If I can't answer it, Dave's here.
Thank you, Renee. Any questions for staff on this item? Vaughn?
Renee, will the 250 cover that entire period even as new legislation comes forward? Because we're seeing so much of that, especially in the housing committee, and how it may affect the work that they do. So that it'll cover all that?
The way I understand it, it will. It's
okay.
Available to help us with the preparation of these documents, and then any unforeseen problems as that may arise or complications, that funding is available.
Okay. And this time we are going about it solo, not as the county, but potentially there may still be a county effort, a regional effort.
Right, the multi-jurisdictional. Mm-hmm. So we have reached out to COG. They are still determining whether or not they're going to be implementing a multi-jurisdictional group. I know Clovis participated in that last time. The city of Fresno did not. Clovis has elected, at least at this point, to go about it on our own, but COG is keeping us in the loop in terms of how they will proceed and if they will actually jurisdictional committee.
Okay. And any kudos from the state and or the county for all the housing allocations that we shouldered for the last cycle at all?
I haven't heard of any kudos or. Well, how about this? We haven't heard anything bad lately, so yeah. That's kudos.
Okay. So because we are going about it individually, then will there still be a county effort where then everybody talks about their numbers and how we will meet the needs for the region or the area?
Yeah, so COG is undergoing a process as well. I mean, as recent as, I think it's this week, they have their first subcommittee meeting. So they have hired a consultant, I believe it's PlaceWorks, that they've hired, and they will be working with them to take the allocation that is handed down from the state, the methodology for then distributing that allocation to their member agencies. So Clovis will be participating as well as the other agencies in that process, and so we have a seat at that table.
And is anything in this agreement lead to an assurance that it'll get certified by the state?
I haven't seen anything that gives us that kind of an assurance. I think we have a pretty high level of comfort with the players that represent Ascent, that they work very closely with HCD. They have a strong working relationship. So I believe we're in a great position, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't have a housing element that would not be approved.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Jose?
I see the report says we went through a competitive bid process, RFP, but it doesn't mention how many responses we received, and it kind of alludes to why we chose Ascent, because they're experienced and they're familiar. But is there any more?
Right, so correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I think Ascent was the only one that submitted a proposal. So we only received one proposal.
Bob?
David or Renee, the fourth cycle was a challenging one for us that continued to have some ramifications. Anything mentioned in the RFP that we sent out and Ascent responded to about that challenge, in the sense that, you know, there may be something that has to be done in the sixth cycle? Because I don't know what's going to happen with it, and I just want them to have their eyes wide open related to it. Any conversation on that level?
So I'll go ahead and start, and Dave, you can jump in. There was quite a bit of discussion in the RFP on the history of what occurred with the fourth cycle, so we were very transparent in the challenges that we were faced with. I have heard discussions from Ascent and even the COG staff that the allocations that are potentially coming out are going to be high. So I don't know exactly what that means for Clovis. That's part of the methodology and the distribution that we will be participating in the COG process. But we're well aware of the ramifications of what happened out of the fourth cycle. Ascent, their particular staff member there is Chelsea, who I know you are probably familiar with. She has come and presented before council, so she understands what the city was faced with and what we need to overcome, and she seemed fairly positive.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open this to the public. Any member of the public in chambers wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
There are none.
And Mr. Clerk, we get any correspondence?
No.
Okay, I'll close public comment and come back to council for discussion or action.
And one more question before the motion, Renee. I know that it kind of related, but not so related to thousand, but will VMT be a part of their assistance and analysis at all with regards to sort of how we incorporate that to try to meet these numbers, and or that is so separate that we won't even touch it here when we talk about the housing element?
I haven't heard the VMT discussion as part of this, but Dave, I don't know if that will become part of our analysis or the considerations, but I haven't heard it come out in any of the meetings that we've had.
I think it probably won't make a lot of sense the way I describe it, but both are probably true. It is separate and distinct. The issues don't converge, except that the housing element does require a CEQA document, and so as part of the CEQA document, there will be some probably brief discussion about VMT, but unless there is new guidance that comes out from HCD in the next few months, it doesn't look like there'll be a specific requirement to incorporate VMT, at least not that I have seen.
Thanks, Dave. I think we're at the motion time.
I'll make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Renee. Workshop for the Clovis City Council to conduct a workshop to discuss the impact on ongoing city operations during the COVID-19 state of emergency as declared by the federal government, State of California, County of Fresno, and City of Clovis, and to explore actions the city may take in response to the crisis. Luke Serpa is our presenter. Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Let me go through some stats. These are the usual stats I show you each week. California cases, we saw things spike up around the holidays. They have bounced up and down, starting to show some downward trend, which is positive, but whether that stays that way or not, it's too early to tell.
Fresno cases, similar. They jumped way up around the holidays. They've dropped down there. They are bouncing around, not really showing a strong downward trend yet, so that's concerning. Last week, I reported to you that we had some very preliminary information as to the number of cases and deaths in Clovis. I'm kind of pleased to report that those did not all occur in the last week. The county changed over their database system, and what resulted is there was a period where cases and deaths were underreported, and then once they got them all into the new system, they were properly reported. So this shows the weekly number of new cases in Clovis. We are at a total of almost 5,000, 4,972 cases so far in Clovis since the pandemic began. They are still elevated and not really showing a downward trend. That last number there is not a complete week. We have not yet received the current week's numbers, so I expect that number to be significantly higher when we do see it. But they have jumped up, and like I said, we're almost 5,000 cases so far to date. The number of daily deaths in Fresno, you can see that the number has been very volatile. They went a week here without any deaths being reported, but it had spiked way before that and after that, and there were other gaps in there. I think that's largely due, some of this volatility is due to the changeover in the database systems. So data was going unreported, then it gets caught up once it gets entered into the system. But they are still bouncing around fairly high, total of 932 deaths in the county since the pandemic began. This is the weekly number of deaths in Clovis. We've had 85 total. Again, I do not have current numbers for this, or complete numbers for the week that ended last week. That may be higher when it comes in. I get that information usually the second business day of the week, so I'll get information tomorrow. But it's not the 25 cases in the previous week that I thought that had originally been reported, which is, I think, a relief. But we still are seeing some, you're seeing in December some of the highest that we had. They're coming down somewhat, but we'll have to see what happens and whether that downward trend continues. This is the graph of total COVID patients in the hospitals in Fresno County and in the ICU, the blue representing the hospitalized COVID cases and the red indicating the ICU COVID cases. This is very important because this is kind of what's driving our enhanced stay-at-home order, is the ICU availability. As you can see, the hospital cases are showing a downward trend, which is good, as are the ICU. Not quite as steep a drop, but the ICU cases are going down, which is a very good trend, is what we want to see, but we still have a long ways to go. So county and regional status. Right now, the county is reporting 75.2 adjusted new cases per 100,000 population. That is up from 61.6 last week. The 18.3 positivity rate is up from 17 last week. And the 19.5% health equity quartile positive rate is up from 17.9. So those numbers are all still going in the wrong direction. The state is reporting 0 ICU availability in the central region, which encompasses us and several other counties in the San Joaquin Valley and foothills. And the stay-home order remains in effect. If council will recall, that stay-home order went into effect in December 10th, and it was based on ICU availability dropping below 15%. Staff kind of learned a little bit more about how this process is working over the last week. The greater Sacramento region, which a week ago was reporting 9.4% ICU availability, which was still well below the 15, they came out of that stay-home order because their projections show them growing to 19% ICU availability within 4 weeks. So it's not, you go into it when you get below 15%, but you come out of it when the projections show over the next 4 weeks you're going to be above 15%. For the record, Sacramento had a 9.4% when the order was lifted. Later in that last week, it dropped to 6.2% availability. They've gone up to 8.9% so far, but they are out of the order, meaning they can have outdoor dining. Gymnasiums are open with limits, as are personal care, hair salons, nail salons, and such. So I looked on the website trying to find what our projection was for the central region, and I have not been able to find that yet. I'm still searching, and hopefully I can get some better answers for, what kind of projections they're looking at for us. But since we're still down at 0.0, I think it's going to be a while before we reach the 15%. So that's where we are. So the ICU number is what controls the stay-home order. The other would still put us in purple tier. It would have to get below 7% to get us into the red tier. So we're still quite a ways from there as well. But the ICU availability is what the stay-home order, which is, kind of a purple plus, if you will. It's everything in purple, plus you can't have outdoor dining, you can't have hair salons, you can't have nail salons, you can't have gymnasiums and such. So that's what that's based on. And that concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Luke. Any questions for Luke? Bob?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So the vaccine rollout has been, it's reported, I don't know if it's accurate, but it's been reported that it's been not going as smoothly as hoped. And the reason for that has been, I really don't know the reason for that. There's just been some finger pointing going on. But I know that when we had an opportunity to assist with doing the COVID testing, we took advantage of it in the city of Clovis. Is there a similar opportunity in order for us to kind of increase the amount of vaccines that are being injected into arms in the city of Clovis that you've heard of?
So we are working on that. There's a number of issues that is complicating and making the vaccination rollout difficult. There's two vaccines that are out there now, the Moderna and the Pfizer. And the Pfizer has to be stored in minus 80-degree temperatures, and there's just not really a lot of facilities that can handle that. The first batches of vaccinations that went to the hospitals were the Pfizer because they have the equipment to store the vaccine at the minus 80. And then last week, the sports and orthopedic clinic in North Fresno, they also have such a facility, and they worked with the county to offer the vaccination there. The county has been giving the Moderna vaccine, originally started down at the fairgrounds, and that was by appointment only, originally for EMS and fire, and then medical clinicians, and then there was also another rollout at facilities that was a number of groups were involved in, pharmacies and other health groups that were giving it at the facilities. There is somewhat of a bottleneck on the vaccine availability at this point. And so they can only give so many vaccines out a day. There has also been some communication errors where, it hits social media, hey, first come, first serve gets a vaccine, and it's caused some traffic problems. One of our biggest concerns, immediate concerns right now, we want to get as many vaccinations out there in the public as possible, but the bottleneck there is probably going to be vaccine availability. And especially, the other challenging thing with these two-part vaccinations is if somebody happened to wait in line for 6 hours or whatever to get it, at the sports and ortho clinic, well, they have to come back in 28 days. And how do they get into the system, and how do they go back and get it in 28 days without having to wait 6 hours in line? We're having similar concerns even with our public safety staff, because they're going to start coming up due for their second round of shots. And Fresno County, I know from where my wife works that there was kind of a rush down there, even though they had appointments. The appointments are booked up, but people are showing up. And the county was hesitant to turn anyone away, so people that had an appointment just had to get in line and wait 2 hours to get their shot. So Chief Banaski has put together, working with County EMS and Fresno Fire, and kind of a proposal that we would at least make sure we provided it the second round to all of the medical professionals and EMS and fire, separate from the public ones, so that those critical personnel that have to be there on a certain date to get their shot don't have to wait in line and just roll the dice to see if there's enough to handle the crowd that day. So far, the county has not been willing to take us up on that offer. We're continuing to work with them. We will do anything we can. We've already talked to United Health Centers, which had partnered with us on the drive-through testing. That's been canceled just because we had 2 more planned this month. Just lack of demand on the testing. Everybody wants vaccinations. We could certainly work with them to do a vaccination, but it's kind of dependent on them getting the supply of vaccines. And now, as we're starting to go into the kind of where some people are due for their second round, well, then it just adds logistical problems from the standpoint of, okay, we've got, we can give 1,200 a day, but we have these 300 people that got theirs 28 days ago, so we need to somehow get them in the system first. So that means we can only accept 900 reservations, and quite frankly, if you show up, and I understand that the county doesn't want to turn people away from these events, but if your tier is not up and you didn't have a reservation, at some point we have to say, sorry, you can't jam up the works here. So it's a logistical challenge. I'm a bit pessimistic that it's probably going to continue to be a challenge. There's greater demand than there is availability of the vaccine. Once we get to the point where if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a single-dose vaccine, is distributed, I think that will certainly help, because it not only it takes away that need for that second shot. So we're working with them. We will do whatever we can to get sites going here in Clovis, but so far that hasn't materialized. Now, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen later in the week, as soon as availability of the dosages. We don't have a facility to handle the Pfizer dose, only the Moderna. But we are working with them, and we'll do whatever we can. And we'll continue to push also, even for, the second dose for those people that have already had it. And the other thing that happened is when, the first tier with EMS or whatever, or firemen, a bunch of them were kind of hesitant. I'm going to wait and see on this. And so, if a third of the department goes and gets their vaccination, then they move on to the next tier. Well, now some of those people are going, I saw, my buddy got it and he came out okay, so now I want mine. So it's a very complicated rollout process. Another thing that concerns us, quite frankly, is that the police department they're several groups away. We haven't even gotten to the police department yet, and yet they are out there oftentimes on the front lines, and they're the first contact with many people. So, one of the things we've talked about is, okay, if we set up our own clinic for the second shots in the fire and EMS, can we get law enforcement throughout the county going through that too? So there's a whole lot of work kind of going on behind the scenes to try to speed it up, but right now I think we're a long ways from having it really dialed in on the record keeping, and making sure that we get everybody that happened to wait 6 hours in line and got one last Friday. Okay, well, 4 weeks from now, you need to be back here. And what if you don't? So it's going to be a challenge to get that worked out. And I really think it's going to continue to struggle until we get that single-dose vaccine out there.
Well, I really appreciate your openness to the idea of, at some point, we don't want to confuse matters, but if necessary, we can assist with the rollout. I think that some of our council members have some contacts that seem to work out pretty well for us, as well as staff. that caused COVID testing at least to get ramped up in the city of Clovis, so that was great.
Yeah, and we've had those discussions with United Health Centers, and I think we'll probably wind up there. I just don't know when.
The only thing I would add is that at some point people thought there was a lot of vaccines, so we should hurry and get them out. And so a lot of people used up their first dose and didn't save your second dose. And now there's worry that the supply is going to not fill back in, so there's not even enough for your second dose. So that just, not only how do I get it, but what if I've given away your second dose? So it has gotten, I don't think anybody anticipated the supply would kind of dry up so quick, not dry up, but slow down so quickly. So that's the other factor that's made people pretty nervous about too much expansion, just because they better save the 3,012 they did for the county, whatever. So that's not helping things either.
Yes, I think in fact at first Fresno County was originally, I think their plan was, okay, if you give us 10,000 doses, I'm going to give 5,000 vaccinations, and when you get me another 10,000, I'll give 5,000 more. But there was actually pressure from the state about no, get those out there. And there's all kinds of finger pointing going as to who promised who what. But the fact of the matter is that these companies that are manufacturing the vaccines, they get a bit of a jump. Once they get they submit everything for FDA emergency approval, they know the results. They're starting to crank out dosages. So in that time period, they've cranked out 10 or 12 days worth of doses. When they get the green light and distribute them, there's a whole big stockpile, but after that, it's just down to daily production.
Any other questions for Luke? Thank you, Luke. We'll go to council comments. Bob, you want to start? No. Lynn?
I don't have anything.
Bob?
Wanted to report out that we met in the League subcommittee meeting for the Housing Community Economic Development. So we voted on the priorities, and we did take a position on Senator Caballero's bill, which was a no unless amended. And so we'll wait. But we didn't get a chance to finish some others, so we may have another meeting. But once we do something, I'll report out again. Thanks.
Jose? The only thing I had to report out is Bob and I were part of a Zoom meeting for the League of Cities Public Safety Committee, and Assemblyman Gibson spoke, and he's chairing a committee that's, to do they have some lofty goals for improvement of law enforcement. And it was actually a very, very good presentation. He did talk about there are two bills going through or being considered. One requires law enforcement officers to have an AA degree before they can even apply. Another one was taking it to a bachelor's degree. And I CC'd Bob a copy on it. I sent a letter to Mr. Gibson because I'm concerned that this will exclude veterans who are getting out of the service. They're going to have to go get in line to get to college to get that. And then it also, I don't know that it's going to work for disadvantaged communities that don't have access to a community college. So my suggestion was that they come up with some type of core classes certification program where people can go through with these classes outside of, maybe outside of an AA degree. I mean, my math class and my science classes did me no good working on the street. And this would alleviate people from getting out of the military like I did and then having to wait 2 years to be able to apply, and with your GI Bill benefits not being enough to pay for you to support your family while you're going to school. So we just cut a whole bunch of people out of the equation. And I know Jose can equate to this. It's hard enough recruiting people and finding qualified people who want to do the job now. And we don't need to put roadblocks up. And so that's all I have to report out. We're going to be going into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interrupt for a second, I'm sorry, I meant to remind council or let council know if you haven't seen it. We are going to be having a responsibly socially distanced groundbreaking for Landmark Square on February 16th at 2 o'clock. If you have not already received the email, it's not going to be a huge event, but this is a big milestone in the city, so we are going to be holding the groundbreaking on that date. So I just wanted to give everybody the reminder of that.
Thank you, Luke. We're going to be going into closed session, and I believe the city attorney has something he has to state.
Just a brief oral announcement is required for this item. In addition to what's on the agenda, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, 2 or 3. The city received a demand letter from an attorney representing an individual who was arrested in January of 2020. This evening's closed session is on that item.
Thank you.
But no action is anticipated this evening.
And we're not reporting anything out.
Correct. There will be no action.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be in closed session.